So today, we'll be interviewing you about your service and during what time you served, what branch of the military. So can we start off? So nice to meet you. What's your name?
My name is Richard Goode.
What branch of military were you?
I was in the Navy.
And what time period did you serve in?
From 1975 to 1979, I took the oath in July of 1975, right after high school. I graduated in June of '75, and then went to. I was on inactive reserves for 3 or 4 months, and then in October I reported to boot camp.
Thank you. And what type of work did you perform during your time?
In the Navy, we have rates, and the rate is your job, like a aviation machinist mate or something like that. I was a training device repairman. TD is the acronym that we use. It doesn't exist anymore. They did away with it in 1985 or somewhere around there. The nickname was Toy Doctor. We repaired anything that had to do with training. I specifically worked on flight simulators.
So where did you serve? Where did you get to see whenever you were?
Born and raised here in Porterville.
Wow.
I went from here to San Diego to boot camp, then to NAS Millington, which is right outside Memphis, Tennessee, for my schooling. I went through 3 schools back there, and then I picked all these beautiful exotic places to go be stationed all over the world, and I got Lemoore Naval Air Station. Right over there. And that's where I served for 3 years.
Okay, I'm sorry. My questions are on my phone. What was your motivation to enlist?
Well, I was accepted to UC Santa Barbara out of high school, and did not see any way that I could afford it. My dad left when I was in elementary school, and he was not going to be able to pay for college, and my mom wasn't going to be able to pay for college. So I was using it as a way to get college paid for. And so I enlisted in the Navy to do that.
Why did you pick the branch that you did?
I was a swimmer and a water polo player. I love the water. Navy just seemed to be the most logical choice. My dad was an officer in the Pacific in World War II. My uncle was in the Pacific in World War II. The Navy just seemed to be the natural choice. I didn't think I was the Marine type.
Yeah. My dad also served in the Navy. So how were your first days going into it, the first experiences you had? What was that like?
Well, I made sure that I had the mindset going into boot camp that they're not going to make me do anything I haven't done before. When I was 14 years old, I was working in the fields picking fruit. And then I worked as a dishwasher and a busboy. And so I've had to do strange and hard jobs before. So I had the attitude that nothing was going to surprise me. And the very first thing that you recall is at 5 o'clock in the morning, a metal trash can flying across the barracks, slamming into the stanchion in the middle, waking you up for your very first day in boot camp. That's an alarm clock.
Yeah. Tell me about boot camp. What was the training experience like?
Well, it was different. Boot camp is designed to train you how to think like a unit, so that you do things instinctively, because if you're on a ship and something happens, you have to know what to do instantly and you have to react. And boot camp is designed to do that, to make you all the same, shaving your head, wearing the same clothes, marching in unison, and all that. But there were some very interesting things. Swimming through fire I thought was kind of fun, where they, in case you have to abandon ship, you go off the ship and you have to swim through fire. The swimming tests were really easy for me because I was swimming in high school. I did not like the tear gas, the gas mask training, because what they do is they put you in a room and you have a mask, you got to get seated tightly, they fill the room with tear gas, and you have to take off the mask and you have to recite the the Navy Creed and your general orders and a couple of other things, and then you get to put it back on and you're in there for a couple of hours, so it's not fun.
That does not sound fun. In those moments where it was like extremely hard like that, and room full of careers, that's crazy. What was going through your mind? How were you getting through that?
You're just concentrating on what you're doing because you're with 60 of your closest friends, and you're doing it together, so it's not like you're doing it alone. And that really helps the camaraderie of having everybody around you. You just do what the person next to you is doing.
Were there any like techniques you used to motivate yourself, and like specifically?
No, I really didn't. I wasn't not motivated. There were lots of things that I did. When we were supposed to be studying, I would take a nap, trying to get as much sleep as I possibly could. And that's, it seemed to work for me, because when I graduated boot camp, I was the academic winner from our company and received a meritorious promotion to E2 Airman Apprentice.
Let me see, I'm trying to pick some good questions because we've covered a lot so far. Did you ever like see combat?
No, I served right after Vietnam. Vietnam ended in May of 1975, and I went in July of 1975, so the Vietnam War was over. However, there was a real dislike for the military at that time, the same sort of treatment that the Vietnam vets received when they came home from Vietnam. The active duty military was seeing the same type of thing. We were not allowed to wear our uniforms off base. We were not supposed to let anybody know we were in the military, because people were being beaten up and attacked because there was a real animosity towards the military at that time. For the longest time, I didn't even let people know I'd served.
Wow. And that's something you'd usually be proud of, so. I lost my place. What were some of your most memorable experiences?
Most memorable experiences. I really liked my job in the military. Working with flight simulators, we would train pilots, and we would operate the simulators for training sessions. And we would have some of the newer pilots come over for practice, in which it would just be me, the flight simulator, and the pilot. And we got to be really creative in the failures that would, because you're supposed to fail this thing in the aircraft and see how he handles it. You're supposed to fail that thing, and just to make sure that they know what to do in the event of any operation. And so it was basically like working with multi-million-dollar pinball machines. It was a lot of fun.
I can imagine. Was there any moments where you felt a lot of like pressure or stress during?
When the simulators would go down, we would work 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to get them up. And the pressure at those point in time were really kind of heavy, because you'll be going for 36, 40 hours straight. And the best you can hope for is to lean up in a corner and get a couple of minutes sleep while you're trying to solve the problems. As for the rest of it, there were not really a lot of pressures. The ones I really didn't like to do much, twice when I was in the military, we had pilots who crashed and were killed. And so they would use the simulators to try to find out what happened. And so you're trying to duplicate why somebody died in a crash, and that was always kind of depressing, and that it was hard to do, but you had to do it. But there were some really cool moments. I was given the task of working with 3 VIPs that came in, because we had one simulator that just simulated landing on a carrier at night. That's all it was for, was to practice landing on carriers. And these 3 men came in and had some strange requests on how to set it up. No power, 9 miles, 13,000 feet, and to come in and land on the carrier with no power. And they did it over and over and over and over again. It wasn't until several months later that we were told that those 3 were shuttle pilots, and they were practicing on every simulator they could find on how to land the space shuttle. And one of them was Robert Crippen, who was the very first pilot of the very first shuttle mission. So that was kind of cool.
I think, like, looking back after.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Was there anything special you did on, like, days where you knew you were gonna go into something that was really important, like maybe working on something important? Was there anything, like, for good luck that maybe you warm up or something?
No, not a lot of, nothing like that. We weren't in a real stressful environment, you know, over at Lemoore, and we wouldn't have those types of stressful type things that you needed luck for. But the rate that I was, it was beaten into our heads, if you will, through all of our schooling, that we are the best, because there's only like 3,000 of us in the entire Navy. And we make ship simulators, sub simulators, weapon system simulators, anything to do with training. And we were told we can fix anything. And that's the mindset that you had. You had a very elite, and it was a really good group, because, you know, as a lower ranking person, we'd be working on something. If it went down, and my area of expertise were the memory modules. Well, if the machine went down and it was a memory module, I became in charge. People who outranked me, I would give orders to fetch this and fetch that and do this and do that. And then once that my part was repaired, it went back to the ordinary rank of things, where I was the one told to go fetch and go do. But the job came first, not the rank.
Did you, sorry. How did people, like, how did you guys entertain yourselves? You know, you're in, like, it's kind of work all the time, like you described, whenever you would have those, like, 24 hours sometimes when something would go wrong, or just in general being on base, being right there. How did you guys, you know, keep yourself entertained?
Well, one of the things, since they're training devices, one of the things that we were in charge of were projectors in the film library. And so we would watch movies after movies after movies after movies on the old 16 millimeter reels. And so that was always accessible to us. We could watch movies ad infinitum when we were on duty in the middle of the night or something like that. But it was nice being stationed here in the Valley, because I liked the midnight to 8 in the morning shift. That was my favorite shift. And we'd get off at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Friday, and we'd go skiing, or we'd go golfing or something like that, and then spend the weekend with our families, and then we're back at it again at midnight to 8 in the morning.
Did you travel anywhere else during service? Anywhere other than Lemoore?
No, Lemoore was it. I did get out to Fallon, Nevada once, and I got down south towards to Miramar once, just on extended duties. But for the most part, no, it was Lemoore.
Okay. Do you recall any, like, particularly humorous or, like, unusual events that, you know, will stick with you, those, like, certain moments?
We had a very, very strict, rigorous lieutenant who was with one of the training squadrons, and he really was a hard nose when it came to doing things. Well, he had some VIPs coming over to show the simulators, and the pilot that was supposed to fly didn't show up. And so I jumped in the cockpit and I flew the flight. I did the mission, I did everything that I needed to do, took off from Lemoore, went and dropped my ordnance, did everything I needed to do in the simulator. We got lots of time to practice with him. Came back, landed at Lemoore, and then he came down to introduce the pilot. And when we opened up the cockpit and he saw me, he turned every shade of red you could imagine. He was so mad. And I said, good afternoon, Mr. Root. Let me get out of your way and you can continue your tour. And I disappeared quickly. But, you know, I didn't embarrass him or anything like that, but he was expecting it. I stayed out of his way for several months.
When you described sometimes you guys had to replicate with simulations, how crashes that went, or things that went wrong, did that ever take an emotional toll on you after?
Well, it's knowing that somebody is dead, and you're trying to figure out why they're dead. That it's not an emotional toll, but it's just something you deal with. In the military, that's something that you're trained to handle. I didn't confront it face to face in combat or anything like that, but you knew at any given time you could. You knew at any given time you could be on a ship and there could be a disaster, and your ship comes first and your shipmates and not you. That's something that you realize. It didn't really sink in that that was a real possibility through my time in, but it is anytime I see an aircraft accident with a military pilot, I'm still analyzing it today. What happened? Looking from just what the news tells me, I can pretty well figure out what happened.
So, do you recall the day your service officially ended?
Yeah, I was over at Lemoore, and I had already had a job I had gotten a job working in electronics here in the Valley, and so I didn't have any time off realistically. It just was one of those. It wasn't a big ceremony or anything. It was just a goodbye, and I left and took my orders and turned in all the stuff that I needed to turn in and drove home.
Did you feel any kind of maybe that you were gonna miss all of the people that surrounded for so long?
Yeah, I still keep in touch with a couple of them that I served with, and I do miss it. I mean, I had a lot of fun doing what I did, and I do regret not staying in for at least in the reserves but I was in the inactive reserves when Desert Storm picked up, and I was advised not to leave on vacation. I should be ready to be called up, but I never was.
How did your experience in the Navy and the military prepare you for anything you pursued after?
There's a leadership quality that you gain in working in the military. You look at things differently, and you tend to take charge in certain instances. You tend to have a confidence that other people may not have. I'm not afraid of any new situation. You analyze it, you know what's going to happen, you plan. There are still times in which old habits do crop up. We were in San Diego for a festival, my wife and I and kids, and Sunday morning I was asleep and I heard To the Colors play over at North Island at 8 o'clock, and I was up out of bed standing in an instant. And that was just, it had been 30 years, and hearing that, so that's my alarm. When I know I have to get up. In the Army, it's Reveille, it's To the Colors in the Navy. So yes, it's there are some habits that don't end.
That never die, yeah. So you said you pursued a career in electronics. What exactly did you go into?
When I got out, I went to work for TRW, and I was a customer service representative. I worked on automated teller machines, banking equipment, computers in offices, and things like that. My territory went from Ridgecrest to Modesto, and did that for 6 years, and then decided I wanted to do something different. So I went back to college, 28 years old, 2 kids and a wife and a mortgage. Went to Porterville College, Cal State Bakersfield. I got my bachelor's in physics. I taught math at a junior high for 2 years, and then I was the AP physics teacher at Porterville High School for 10. And then Porterville College hired me to be the physical science, geology, or science teacher, and so then I now have a master's degree in earth science from Mississippi State University. And so it's just kind of been a path that wandered through.
That's great. Oh my gosh, that's so cool.
organizations since then or anything like that?
Well, for the longest time, there wasn't a veterans organization that I was allowed to join. VFW only is for members of foreign wars. The American Legion, there were specific times that Congress set that you could serve. And the Vietnam ended in May of '75. I went in July of '75, so I didn't qualify to be a member of any organization until very recently I joined AMVETS, and now the rules have changed for American Legion, and I've joined American Legion as well.
How is that? Like, what do you
I joined it for the camaraderie with other veterans. Unfortunately, I teach Mondays and Wednesday nights at the college pretty much all the time, and the meetings are Mondays and Wednesday nights, and so I have never been able to make a meeting, but I still stay up on things with literature and that sort of stuff.
So, how do you think overall your experience in the military has impacted your life, has shaped you to who you are today?
Well, it's, you know, the Marines say once a Marine, always a Marine, and it's the same thing, once a sailor, always a sailor. I look at things differently than I think a lot of people do. There are some habits that my wife finds annoying at times that are habits. I can't break them. I think that whenever I'm at the college, whenever there seems to be a committee or something that they want somebody on, that it's going to be a difficult chore, I'm one of the ones that is asked to serve, because difficult jobs don't scare me, and I can see the overall picture. I don't play favorites. The leadership that you get in the military is something that really sticks with you for a very long time.
Do you think there's anything we have not covered in this interview? Maybe, do you tell your children, your stories, and how do they ever ask questions? How do they react?
Well, for the longest time, I felt kind of uncomfortable about my military service because it was during peacetime, and there was no conflict. Kind of felt that you were a second-class veteran because you did not serve during war. You didn't. And that stuck for a very long time until we were someplace and when they were asking you to stand up when your branch's song was played, and when Anchors Aweigh was played, I didn't stand, and my daughter asked me why. And so I was kind of, well, okay, so I kind of explained it to her, and since then it's been more and more, I've become more and more active with it, and somebody pointed out that it makes no difference when you served or how you served. You had the potential of being in combat, and you were willing to go, and only 3% of the people in the United States do that. And so even though we were at a time of peace and nothing was going on, we carried over the traditions and the training, so when something happened, the people were trained and ready to go that followed us, and so you carry on that lineage. I still feel that it's odd. I don't feel I don't really feel that servicemen are to be thanked for their service. We all did it for one reason or another, and it's nothing special. We just did what we did. And it's nice. I work with the veterans at Porterville College, and it's nice being with a group and we see stories and things like that. My son, when he was 5, there was an air show over at Lemoore that had the Blue Angels were there. And so I took him over and I called the detachment where I worked and asked him if I could take him through the simulators. And the chief there remembered me, and so he said, sure. So my son still remembers at the age of 5 sitting in the cockpit of the A-7 aircraft and playing with the knobs and levers and throttle and pulling the trigger and doing all that type of stuff that he still remembers that. That made a big impact on him. And so we talk about some of the stories. Some of them are fun, some of them are not. The fun ones are always, really fun. I had we got a new admiral over at Lemoore, and he came over to play with the simulators because he wanted to get tried out. He wanted to get checked out for his for the aircraft, so he knew what his pilots were doing. And he came over. It was just me and him and his aide. and got him in there, got him all set up. He was a good pilot to begin with. And so I started doing the little sadistic things that I would do to fail things. And he would say, well, that wouldn't happen in the aircraft. And I'd say, give him my reason. Oh, that's a good idea. And so we had this good thing going on. Well, his aide decided he wanted to play with the buttons. And so he cranked the wind up from 0 to 350 knots in an instant, and the simulator was on a motion base. It moved, and it slammed against one wall and back against the other wall, and the admiral swore like a sailor at that point in time. And I looked at his aide, and his aide just went white. His career was right there in the palm of my hands. I had his career. And so I told the admiral that it was malfunction. No worries, sir. We're going to set back up. Hang on. Got it going again. And I gave the lieutenant commander a dirty look and told him to sit there and not move. And we got a good laugh out of that, because when they say don't touch the buttons, what's the first thing you want to do? You want to touch the buttons. And he was, yeah. So I had the power to ground pilots if they didn't measure up, until an instructor came over and worked with them. And so I took my job very seriously. It was a lot of fun, though.
That's good. Okay, well, I know you said you don't think veterans didn't think for their service. Sometimes you did what you did, but thank you, because it is very important. It keeps the country running, So thank you very much. And yeah, I think that's it for the interview. Thank you so much.
I have something here for you.
Okay.
The children at, I believe it's Dooley Elementary, want to make this for you.
Oh, how sweet. You know what? These things are the best things ever. You know what? I get evaluated every 3 years by my colleagues. They come in and they fill out paperwork, and my students tell me how I do. But these are the best. When I do something for an elementary school and I get the thank you notes and things like that, that's the best stuff. That's the best stuff. So.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you.